welcome to the stage, Slash with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators!
So pull your head down. We've been never left forever, so you better dance for now. Don't deny it. What you needing in the clouds? Here it comes, here it comes. Time to tidy up your head, oh. Put on your head, oh. Put on your head, oh. Here it comes, here it comes. Time to tidy up your head, oh. You me. Let's see those hands, come on. That's it. All the way to the back website here. That's it, beautiful. Well, thank you very much. We're going to do a little song off our new record. This is called Standing in the Sun. You like that one? All right. Just keep those hands up. I want to see you all back. Come on. That's it. You only die to lie, you're never satisfied. You only know the things that will fail to be. The pessimistic one who sees the end become, where every joy is lost to a tragedy. And still you wonder why you cannot find your peace today. That's right, you were meant to live for so much more than this. Now if only you could see, you could be standing down. The way you drag around your heavy heart just like a stone. Well, kill misery, so follow me, 'cause I got problems of my fucking own. You could be standing out in the sun, still the rain's coming down, rain's coming down. So keep your power of darkness and know my mind parade. It's a day. Yeah, if I could, you know I'd set up a spark. I would burn it out, I would burn it right away and purify your jaded coke out his heart. Someday I'll find a way. You could be sailing out in the sun, still the rain's coming down, rain's coming down. There ain't a cloud inside, still your heart beats cold and gray. Yeah, today you could be sailing out in the sun, still the rain's coming down, rain's coming down. If I could see the spark, I would burn your doubt away.
Thank you very much. How's everybody feeling out there tonight? It's so good to see y'all. Thank you for coming to the show. We're gonna do a little song called Back from Cali.
Woke up this morning all alone. I got a ringing in my head. I couldn't take it anymore today. She left me here for dead. Oh, that's right. Sing it, come on. And it's all coming some surprise. I should have known it from the start. The lights are faded and I can't deny the city's got so much fucking heart. If you can't hear me tonight, if you can't hear me tonight, you'll have to carry me back from Cali. I'm tired and broken and I lost my way. You have to carry me back to where I belong. You have to carry me back from Cali. I don't want money, I don't need the pain. You have to carry me back to where I belong. I got to leave this dangerous can hear me tonight, if you can hear me tonight, I lost my way, I'm so alone, and all I want is to go home. That's right. Yesterday was Tuesday, maybe Thursday, you can't see. Well, school starts punctually, and this hotel wasn't free. So I tell your financial accounts, maybe I'll return the key. Well, 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 you just can't tell. Well, 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 Mama Michelle. Well, 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 you never can tell. Well, 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 Mama Michelle. Everyone is wrong. You know that twitching in my hands. Hand is twitching in my hands. Can't help me with this feeling, 'cause I'm falling all to pieces and I can't get out of bed. Hey guys and hangers on, try to take you from me. Someone with a Bible in his pocket, counting everything you say. Hey guys and hangers on, they keep jumping away. Bury your soul in the river, 'cause the end is here to stay. Can't hear you, make some noise for us, Sydney.
Sydney, I want to see those hands way up high. Come on. There we go. That's it. You guys are fucking great.
Way back there, that's it. If I said I don't need anyone, then chase it to you, 'cause I can count on anyone just like I turn on you. I got a tongue like a razor, a sweet switchblade knife. I can do you favors, but then you do it every night. Here I am, you're your rocket queen. I might be a little young, but honey, I ain't naive. Here I am, your rocket queen. Oh yeah, I might need too much, but honey, you're better stay. I've had everything imaginable pass before these eyes. I've had everything that's tangible. Honey, you'd be surprised on your sexual innuendo in this kind of paradise. If you tell me I know what I think, you would have told me all the night. Here I am, sing it. I might be a little young, but honey, I ain't naive. Here I am, your rocket queen. Oh yeah, I might be too much, but honey, you're better stay.
I can't hear you. Come on. Thank you so much. You guys having a good time so far? All right, good. We're gonna do another song off the new record. How many people have Apocalyptic Love? Fantastic. We're gonna do one of our favorite songs. This is a song about an epiphany. This is called Not For Me.
Sunrise creeping in, broken bottles everything. The room is black, the blinds are drawn. I don't remember anything, what I've done or where I've been. Another night is come and gone. This is not for me. This is not for me. No, this life is not for me. No, this is not for me. No, and that's right. The devil smiles and laughs at me, says you'll be back, just wait and see. You know I've heard this all before, and I say you can keep your high life in the hills, your cocaine lines and whiskey grills. I don't need you anymore. This is not for me. Oh, this is not for me. Oh, this life is not.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Todd Kearns on the vocals. Come on over here, Todd.
Miles fucking Kennedy, people! Sydney, Australia! Jump, 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 jump! I went to see the doctor. Said your head is sick. Got some real bad habits. You better stop right quick. Said doctor, that's real bad news. Don't know what I'm gonna do. Doctor, nothing's wrong with me. Doctor, doctor, can't you see? Doctor, I ain't gonna die. Just like me, I'm never born to see a shaver. They said you'll be alright. Just keep doing what you love every fucking night. Said that's what I need to hear. Took away my childish fears. Doctor, you're the stand-up guy. Doctor, doctor, oh my. Doctor, you're the one for me. That's the mojo that I need. Don't you know I feel alright doing what I do? I ain't gonna turn the light, not till I turn blue. All we got is one short life, that's what people say. I ain't gonna waste a second doing what you say. Slash! I won't be the one you like. I won't be the boy next door. I won't be the chosen one. That's not what I'm here for. I don't like the way you are. I despise what you hold dear. Don't you try to make me change. I hunt you for 1,000 years. Doctor, don't you talk that way. Doctor, don't you miss my name. Doctor, stay away from me. Sick is what I'd rather be. Doctor, 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 death. Doctor, doctor, right up breath. Doctor, I ain't gonna die. Just like me, I'm alibi. Sydney, I hear you sing. You're hiding out and laying low. Nothing new to me. You can always find a place to go. You can keep your sanity. They break down the door and they read my lines, but they won't touch me. They preach and yell, fight or flight. You won't tell me that the head, I close my eyes. They won't touch me. 'Cause I'm the something on the building up inside. So fucking low, they won't catch me. They won't catch me. I'm fucking innocent. They won't break me. Sometimes it's easy to forget where you're going. Sometimes it's hard to leave. But again, you think you know just what you're doing. That's when your troubles exceed. They break down the door and they read my lies, but They won't touch me. Reaching out for your life. You can't tell me that they close my eyes. They won't touch me. And there's something in the belly of the side. I'm already gone. They're attacking me. They won't catch me. 'Cause I'm innocent. They won't break me. No. No. Some people got a chip on their shoulder. Some say it was me. Did you know that this whiskey that you gave me? I'll be quick to disagree. They're attacking me. They won't catch me. I'm fucking innocent. They won't break me. Sing it. They're attacking me. They won't catch me. 'Cause I'm innocent. So you can stop me. Sydney, I say you make some fucking noise. Take that with your heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Todd Kearns, fucking most annoying guy now.
Simultaneous, come on. You were 2 years last, I don't recall, never did see the light.
Thank you so much.
In the dark, though the aim was true, still it missed the mark as we wait for a hero we can find. Now I know, now I realize it's a hard line. Once you cross, you're on your own. But I won't lie, I'm not satisfied. Still your wings are mine and assured us all in the end everything's gonna be alright. But they won't. Now I realize it's a hard life. We can fight it on our own. But I won't lie, I'm not satisfied. Oh, say tomorrow. When your heroes turn to the enemy, there is nothing left to hold. When your heroes leave only apologies, I won't deny it leaves me cold. But we're still alive, still alive. Oh, oh, oh. But we're still alive, still alive in the end. Now I know, now I realize it's a hard life. We can face it on our own. But I won't lie, I'm not satisfied. We'll say tomorrow. When your heroes turn to the enemy, there is nothing left to hold. When your heroes leave only apologies, I won't deny it leaves me cold. When your heroes turn to the enemy, there is nothing left to hold. When your heroes leave only apologies, I won't deny it leaves me cold. But we're still alive, still alive. Oh, oh, oh. If we're still alive, I will never doubt you again.
Thank you very much.
This could be our last goodbye. You can save me, I am fading. Love is on my head tonight. This could be our last goodbye. You can save me, I am fading. Love is on my head tonight. Anastasia, Anastasia, my honor tonight. You can save me, I am fading. Love is on my head tonight. this next part. some reason that I can't escape. Cut me down 1,000 times a day. I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. I trusted you when there was no one else. All you did was make me doubt myself. Don't believe you anymore. Don't believe you anymore. You left me out, you threw me down. Your time has come, you can go. 'Cause I'm a liar. All my faith has been wasted, wasted. Liar. I won't sit there and say this anymore. I'm fragile, but I'm not a fool. I won't hear another word from you. You won't hurt me anymore. You won't hurt me anymore. The hand I held just held me down. It took so long, now I know. 'Cause I'm a liar, liar. All my faith has been wasted, wasted. Liar, liar. I won't sit there and take this anymore. You can say anything that you wanna say, but my attention is gone on and taken away. You're such a lie, you are only the enemy. Everything you are, I will deny.
All right, Sydney, did you have a good time tonight? That doesn't sound very convincing. Sydney, did you have a good fucking time or what? All right. In case you're wondering, we got these cameras all around here. We have been recording all of this show, so who knows what will happen. You might see yourself on the telly one day. I want to say a very special thank you to our friends in Rose Tattoo, ladies and gentlemen. Please make some noise for those legends. It's an absolute honor. I want to take just a minute here and introduce to you some of the conspirators. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for Mr. Frank Sidoris on the guitar. And on the drums, please make some noise for Mr. Brent Fetz. I've already met this one, but we're going to introduce him again. Ladies and gentlemen, the oh so talented, fantastic on bass and vocals, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Todd Dammit Kearns. needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise on the electric guitar for Slash!
Cheers, motherfuckers! Alright, I want to take a moment to introduce Mr. Miles fucking Kennedy here, the man with the fucking beautiful voice, man. Pretty good fucking guy all around. Alright, here we go. fantastic. We have a good time. been there since the beginning, so I want to say thanks to all you fuckers all the way back here, over there, and all the way in the middle here. Cheers. All right. Ciao.
Hey, I'm Slash, and you're watching me on Mosh Camp. Tour is awesome. It's been really great. We started touring basically in May, and we've just been really well received in all the different countries we've been in so far. You know. We went from playing one song off the new record, like normally you would do, to playing like about 7 songs off the new album, out of demand, not just because we were being sort of overindulgent. So that's pretty good. Well, I mean, we play, I mean, Halos, most of the songs are great live, but Halos particularly, you know, a lot of fun. It's got a good energy to it. There's a song called No More Heroes that seems to be really popular. And, we just started doing a song called Crazy Life, which is going over great. And so, and we keep picking new songs and adding them in and seeing what happens. Well, I mean, like off the last record, Back from Cali is always a lot of fun to play. And, of course, from, you know, like the Guns catalog, Paradise City is always great. And, you know, I mean, I pretty much, you know, I only pick songs I really enjoy performing live. You know? The first concert that I went to of my own instigation was the World Music Festival in Los Angeles in 1979. It was great. It was Aerosmith and Van Halen headlining the second day, and the first day was Cheap Trick and Ted Nugent, and it was a whole day full of bands, UFO, The Babies, REO Speedwagon, whatever. You know, it's pretty cool. First show I ever played with one of my dad's friends at a place called Al's Bar in downtown Los Angeles doing Stones covers when I was about 15. That was my first real gig. We had a great show just a couple days ago. I mean, we had a lot of really, really great shows. I'd hate to say that there was any one favorite. They're all, you know, when you have a great night, which is more often than not, then, you know, they're all your favorites at that point. One of the best concerts I've seen comes to mind in recent years was Rage Against the Machine at Lollapalooza in Chicago a few years ago. Van Halen back in 1979, you know. A couple Stones shows over the years, a couple Aerosmith shows, AC/DC, almost every AC/DC show I've ever been to. Yeah, I've seen a lot of great concerts. There's no one venue that I'm, you know, in particular that I'm dying to play. There's certain cities and countries that I'd like to go to. We're playing India for the first time coming up next year. Hopefully playing South Africa, which I've been dying to play. Let's see, you know, go back. We played Russia once, but we had a situation with Todd, our bass player, had to have eye surgery as soon as we landed, so he had to make an emergency flight back to LA. And Brent played bass and our drum tech played drums, so I'd like to go back to Russia and play a proper gig. You know, I mean, the craziest fan moment that I've had recently, I'm not even sure if it was a fan or if it was like a hater. I'm not really. I had a guy jump on stage in Milan and almost tackle me, but one of our guys got him just as he got me, and they ended up falling off the stage, and my guitar started to go with him, but then I managed to get that back and finish the song. And that was memorable. There's been a few incidents like that where you have people get up on stage that you weren't exactly planning for, that you have to deal with. But I mean, you know, all in all, you know, every time you play in front of just a really passionate audience, it could be 2,000 people, it could be 20,000 people, it could be 60,000 people. Those are really memorable gigs. It's not just one person, it's really just the whole sort of energy of the whole thing. And fortunately, I've had many of those. I'm pretty laid back, you know. I definitely don't go into a panic when somebody jumps on stage, but it definitely, you know, a lot rides on what their intentions are. You know, sometimes if somebody just runs up on stage, jumps on and jumps off, that's fine. You know, if they want to suddenly play my guitar, that's a little bit of an inconvenience for me. You know. Yeah, man. Yeah, it was great to receive. This was just the other day. We received a gold plaque for Apocalyptic Love, and then they said that we're gonna have a platinum one coming pretty soon. So, you know, that means that people are digging the record, and you know, it's always flattering to get this. You know, I don't pay attention to the record sales, so when the record company comes to me and goes, okay, well here's an acknowledgement of a certain amount of records sold, I'm like, okay, well, you know, I guess we're doing okay. This album is just it's the first record that I've done with the Conspirators, you know, with Miles and Todd and Brent, and that was something that came together sort of magically at the tail end of my making my last record, which was my first solo record. And I met Miles Kennedy, and I asked him if he wanted to do a tour with me to help me support the record. He'd sang 2 songs on the record, and I didn't know who he was. I heard of him, but I hadn't heard him sing, and I'd never met him before. And it was just by chance that I called him up, and I thought I was so impressed with his vocal ability and his personality, and just, you know, his writing and everything. And so I asked him to do the tour, and he signed on to do it. And then I went out looking for drummers in Los Angeles, and I've met everybody in LA, and I somehow got diverted to meeting Brent in Las Vegas. And he turned out to be the perfect drummer, and he introduced me to Todd Kearns, who's like one of the most amazing musician, bass player, singer guys I've ever met. And it just turned out to be this really great band, and so that's turned into this album. So it's something very special about this particular record for me. No, I think the lineup's definitely locked. We go in, I'm starting to write material now for what will be another record down the line, and Miles is also an Alter Bridge, so I have to wait for an Alter Bridge cycle to happen. So I'll spend all that time just working up the music and sending him, you know, bits and pieces, see if he comes up with any lyrical ideas and so on. And then we'll reconvene and do a second album at some point, either next year or the year after.
So where should I go to see healer?
Well, I mean, my kids are 8 and 10, and they've been tinkering around with instruments for the last couple of years. They haven't settled. I mean, I think Cash, my youngest, is really into piano, and he plays really well by ear. So we'll see what that turns into, you know. And then London, my oldest, is going from bass, now he wants to play drums. And so, you know, they haven't turned, like when I started playing guitar, I was, 14 going on 15. I think it was the summer I turned 15. And I was hardcore, 24/7, you know, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, ever since. So I'm sort of waiting to see if they make that kind of commitment, and then we'll take it from there. As far as like what type of music they want to get into, it's hard to say. They listen to basically what their parents listen to, which is, you know, anything from blues to heavy metal to, you know, the wife likes certain dance music and whatnot. So we'll see.
Yeah, so no Justin Bieber for them?
No, thank God. Well, they get together with some of their friends, a couple girls actually that they know are decent musicians, and so they'll come over and they'll plug in and do this whole little sort of concert thing in the attic, and it's actually pretty cool, you know. I haven't jammed with that particular lineup, but I have played with London and Cash on the piano and sort of helped them through playing some riffs and stuff like that. No one particular story about record. You know, the thing about picking stories and stuff is, for me, it's all just one big adventure. So it's all very interesting, and one thing leads into another. But the making of this record was a lot of fun because it was for me, it was the first time I actually played live with the band and kept my guitar tracks, and that was a huge experience for me. But I mean, other than that, it was just we just had a really good time just working together, and all that time that we spent in the studio was a lot of hard work, but everybody was really dedicated, and it was just a lot of fun. We're gonna do this tour, and then we'll see. We'll see. You never know. We might jump on another Soundwave tour at some point, or we have to wait till the next record's done. So one or the other.
Hi, I'm Ace, I'm Slash's guitar tech, and I'm here to take you through all the gear we use when we do our show here. First, we'll start with the beginning of our signal chain, which would be Slash, who's not here right now. That's where all the tone comes from. All this shit is just to capture it and try and get it out of the speaker so everyone can hear all the beautiful stuff going in his head. Pretty much our main guitars right now are these Slash AFD guitars. They're replicas of a Les Paul that he used on the Appetite for Destruction album and every album since then. He actually used the original guitar on the last album, but we keep it safely put away, and we use copies Gibson makes for us that are awesome guitars in their own right. It's the main guitar I change strings on every day. And then the slide guitar he'll play one song on, so I'll wipe it down really well because his sweat will corrode through the strings, and maybe I can get 3 shows out of that. So 3 times I'll go through that one. We usually keep around 160, 170 guitars, which is a lot, but not a world record. I mean, he's not really a collector. We don't go looking for guitars. I go looking for guitars when we're on tour. I'm more of a collector than he is. This is called my B rig. We have 2 rigs, a B rig and an A rig. The A rig is waiting for me in California right now. We'll be going back pretty soon. And then we start a US tour with that one. The A rig and B rig are functionally identical. There's a few small, minuscule differences, but by and large, they have the exact same thing. This is one of the older signature guitars. This one, as you can see, has had a neck repair. However, this particular guitar just sounds great, plays great, is great, so still part of the working arsenal. And then we have more of the AFD guitars. We have a new prototype we're working on. I can't show you, or maybe I can, I don't know. But we got 2 of those, and then we have some guitars with Floyd Roses for a song that we don't have in the set right now. So I can show you one of them. See this one? It's the same as the AFD, the first guitar, except for we had Gibson make some with Floyd Roses for us for one particular song. So is it kind of illegal to have a Floyd Rose on a Les Paul? Maybe. Do we care about the law? No. After that, the next thing that comes into our signal chain goes through a cable into our wah. I have another one taped down to the stage out there. This is my spare. And this is our new signature wah. Dunlop just came out with these this last spring. Works great, sounds great, and it has the sweep Slash is looking for. And it's just a good all-around basic wah. You know, it's got the tonality that we're looking for, and they're reliable and really well made, and it's a big part of his sound is this wah pedal. After the wah pedal, the signal comes back around, comes back to me here at the pedal board. I do all the pedal switching. I take care of everything besides the wah. First thing I have here is a tuner, which I use as a mute so we can do guitar changes. Sometimes I use a tuner, sometimes I use an AB box. I'm having some custom pedals made up that'll do the same job. So, you know, that part changes. Next in the signal chain, we've got, here's my boost. We use this a lot anytime we hit a solo. In a couple different parts in the song, I'll hit that. What that does is it gives them 12 decibels of boost, which brings the signal up, puts them forward in the mix, and gives them a little bit more gain out of the amplifiers to get a little more sustain and a little bit more grit out of them. Next we have the Phase 90. This is made popular by Van Halen, like that Panama sound that we use it a little bit here and there. Actually only in one part of the set right now. So that's an effect that I hit very rarely, and you know, it's got a kind of an interesting color to it. Next we have, this is another one of our signature pedals. This is the Octave Fuzz. I have a piece of tape with my settings over it. This is a new Dunlop pedal they just came out with us. In addition to the wah that they both came out this spring. This one is a fuzz and an octave pedal, and when you have it on, it has your basic signal and then an octave below, and then it fuzzes them both, and then when you hit this up button, it gives you a third octave, which would be the octave up, which gives you that Jimi Hendrix kind of sound. So it's a really good, you know, really fattens the sound up, and between the octave pedal and the fuzz, it really goes crazy. You can hear it most prominently in Paradise City, in the middle solo, where he goes, "Wow," I'm not going to do it in my mouth, but you can hear he goes between the octave pedal to the boost, back to the octave pedal, and then back out. And you know, it really makes for a fat, colorful sound. Then we have a tremolo pedal. This one makes the guitar signal come in and out like womp, 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 like that. That's for the song Beautiful Dangerous we did with Fergie. If she ever comes out, the pedal's here. If not, it's just a boat anchor. It's holding down my pedal board so it doesn't fly away in the wind. Next we have our delay. He's had the same style delay, not the same delay box, but the same style since pretty much Appetite. So for a long time it's been this Boss DD3. They work, you know, they sound the way we're looking for, real simple. Got about 2 places I use it in the set right now. And you know, good delay. You know, we don't use a lot of effects. It's just to add a little bit of color here and there. Perfect for that. Finally, we have our MXR analog chorus. That gives that shimmery sound that's also in Paradise City. That's the only place we're using it right now. At the very beginning, where the guitar's kind of got that shimmery, open, kind of cowboy kind of chords, but like 80s cowboy. After the chorus pedal, it runs back out. I have a little custom audio electronic splitter underneath the board, which you can't see. Real boring. 1 in, 2 outs. Simple as that. With a little bit of line buffer in there, just to add a little bit more signal in, because all these things kind of, you know, you run your guitar through that much stuff, you got to put a little bit back in just because you're running through so many circuits. And then that splits it, sends it out into my 2 heads. We're running 2 Marshall heads. This top one is the Marshall AFD 100. This is our signature Slash head. This one came out a few years ago. This is a limited edition. Usually we start with all the settings at around 6 and then dial in for the room. This is where we've sort of ended up for now. Sometimes we'll dial a little bit in and out here and there, but not too much really. This is a brand new, well, almost brand new. We've had it a few months, which puts years on any piece of gear. So this is a 2203 JCM 800 reissue, also from Marshall. We changed out the tubes in this for 6550s. Other than that, it's a stock like you'd buy one out of the box. You know, if you were to put the 6550s in it, you'd have to rebias it, but that's not that much work. Just gives it a little bit, it makes it a lot louder is really what it does, and gives it a little bit more round sound. And then I have a spare set right here, identical, on, ready to rock if those two ever die on me. These two are right there, got my back. Then we have my workbox full of all kinds of shit. Weaponry, tools, you name it. I was working on a few pedals today, changing a few batteries, putting a little bit of nut sauce on stuff, changing strings, you know, basic day-to-day maintenance. You know, he's really hard on this gear, and we have to have 2 or 3 of everything, especially shit that breaks. So, gotta be ready to roll with it, gotta be ready for anything to happen up here. And, you know, it's a real easy rig, real nice rig. I like how simple it is. I like that there's not a lot of bells and whistles. Keeping all this stuff up and running for that guy with the top hat's a full-time gig, but I love it, you know. Love the gig, love the guy, love the sound. It's a great place to be for me.